All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Bob Proctor. Bob, welcome.
Thank you very much, Guy. It's great to be here.
So Bob was born in 1961, the same year that his legendary father, Bob Proctor, was given the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which began his father's 60-year journey into personal development. For close to 30 years, Bob had the privilege of working alongside his father as he taught from some of the world's largest stages. And for 60 years, they were best friends. While working with his father, Bob found his niche in marketing and business development. In the very early years of the internet, Bob originated a powerful idea to build an email list by creating value, which morphed into a massive worldwide platform for his father to share his teachings. This idea set Bob Proctor's company up for success by opening the door early to email list building long before that became the industry standard. Today, we're talking about his book, My Father Knew the Secret. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Guy. You know what? This is great to be here and share some ideas.
I appreciate it. Look, I am so thrilled to have you here. It's kind of crazy. But let's start out here. When you were growing up, how did your father and his teachings impact you specifically?
Well, you know, when I wrote this book, My Father Knew the Secret, it's all the lessons that I learned from Dad growing up. And as a young child, how it specifically impacted me was, quite frankly, in the way he built my self-image. He brought me up in a way that made me aware that I was capable of being, doing, or having anything I want in this world.
And how did you do that?
Well, he really started that with nightly prayers. At night, he would be the one that would tuck me into bed. And I can remember as far back as I can remember, I can picture him coming up to the bed and sitting on the side of the bed, and he would put his hand on my chest and he would start talking to me, and he would just have that personal connection. And he would start, sharing all the good things that happened in the day. And if something wasn't quite good, he'd have me start to look at what was good out of it. So he always had me look for the good, even in a bad situation. And he would reinforce all the positive behaviors, all the things that I did that day in a really nice way. Well, then he would end the kind of the prayer before I went to sleep. He would say to me, he would just say, Brian, you are capable of being, doing, or having anything you want in this world. And you're going to live a great life. And he said, you're going to sleep really well. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a big smile on your face and be ready to carry on a great day. And that's my earliest memory of my father.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so, he really built a strong self-image in me just by doing that. How often do we do that with our kids? And I did it with my own children, and I now have grandchildren, and my daughter is doing that with her children. It's just it's a magnificent way to build a strong self-image into a young person. That's my first memory.
That is just, you can just feel what that would do to a young kid, right? One of the lessons I've heard you talk about before was this MMFI.
Yes.
Share with us what that is.
Well, what that is, Dad used to like to call this the impression of increase. And Guy, I remember when I was 9 years old, we had just moved to Chicago. We had lived in several different towns already. I was born in Toronto. We moved to England for a year, moved back to Toronto, and then moved to Chicago, all before I was 9 years old. So I was forever that new kid in the school. And I can remember sitting with Dad in the study of the house in Chicago. And I said to him, Dad, I'm just nervous about going back to school again. I just hate being that new kid. And that's when he said to me, like you said, the MMFI, he says, if you just put those letters across the forehead of whoever you're talking to, and what they mean is make me feel important. He said, if you can make the person you're talking to feel important, feel seen, he said, you're going to make friends really easily. And people are going to love you and want to be your friend. And that was a lesson I learned at 9. Well, I carried that lesson through to today. I try my best to make everybody I am in contact with feel better because they were in my presence today. And that's what Dad called the impression of increase. And if we can make everybody in our presence feel better because they came into contact with us that particular day in just something we say or do, we can potentially change the direction of that person's life. But even at a minimum, you'll just make them feel better in that moment. And it's just a wonderful way to live, and a great way to treat anybody that comes into your sphere, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, it sounds simple. It is simple.
It
Make
is very,
someone, but we don't do it. Generally speaking, we do. Why do we not do this?
I think we don't do it because we don't give it thought. We don't even think about it. Dad always said that most people just do what they do because they've just got habits and paradigms that they formed since they were young, and they don't think that they can change them. It's our awareness is what it all comes down to. And if we're not aware of making other people feel special, well, then it's never going to happen. We're just not going to do it. But if we understand the reason for it and the importance of it, it's a beautiful thing. One of the things my father and I always did when he was alive, we used to talk every morning, really early. We're both really early morning people. And we could be on the phone at 5 a.m. very easily. And what we did was we would talk good about people behind their back. So often people get caught up in gossip and nasty stuff about other people when they're not there in front of you. And it's a negative way of being. And, it's easy to get caught in that trap. But how nice is it if you can start talking good about people behind their back? And how does that make you feel when you start sharing a conversation like that? You feel better in your day. It's a better way of being. And so if you can do that in front of them as well, well, you're off to the races. It's just awareness, Guy. That's all it really is.
One of the, I think, major elements of your father's work, and correct me if I'm wrong, was his thoughts on paradigm and paradigm shifting. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, he was always big on that. We actually had a seminar that he taught called the Paradigm Shift. And he talks, paradigms are really just a multitude of our habits, our attitudes, and our thoughts towards things. And our paradigms are usually created when we're young, either by our parents or those around us. And some paradigms are great, and some paradigms are not so good. And Dad was always about the ones that aren't helping you, aren't furthering you, aren't making you better. You need to change them. And he would really show how the mind worked and what we had to do to change our paradigms. And it starts with awareness. If you're not aware that you've got a bad paradigm or a bad way of thinking, well, you're not going to change it. But you need to start thinking, what is serving you and what's not serving you? And if you find something that's not serving you, it's time to change it. And it could be your attitude towards anything. We all have different paradigms, but he would say to change anything, especially a paradigm, it takes repetition, because these are things that are formed in the core of our being. And they don't necessarily change overnight. It can change really quickly if some catastrophic event happened. If somebody close to you passed away, or you were through a bad storm and your house was demolished, your paradigms can be changed immediately. But typically, how to change your way of thinking about something, it's going to take repetition. And he was always big on writing out affirmations, writing out goals, whatever that may be. If you wanted to live and be a certain way and you're not that way yet, well, he would tell you to create an affirmation in the present tense, like you're already there, and write it out every morning and look at it, feel it. And he said, you might not change in the first week or two. And you think, well, what's the point of doing this? But if you keep doing it, it's going to alter the way you think. And a month, 2 months down the road, all of a sudden, you're going to find that you're thinking that way. And it's a really powerful way to change our paradigms into something, or a version of us that we would rather be.
So let's talk a little bit more about the book here. Why did you write the book?
Well, I wrote the book because, Guy, I spent 30 years working with my father by his side. We were business partners, we're great friends, and obviously father and son. But the big thing that I always got asked at these seminars was, what's it like being Bob Proctor's son? And that's kind of a hard question to really just answer in a sentence. So this book came to be. I had a chat with my wife, and I wanted to write a book. Dad always said there's a book in everybody. And she said to me, she said, well, why don't you write about all the lessons your father's taught you? Everybody's always asking you, what's it like having Bob Proctor as a father? And I thought, boy, what a great idea. So that's what I started to do. And so this book I wrote as a way, well, at the time, my father was alive. So I just thought it would be a tribute, a nice thing for him. Now I see it as really a way to keep his memory and his lessons alive, because, he passed away about a year and a half ago. And so this book is chock full of stories, secrets, lessons, everything I learned from my father on how to live a better life. Dad never gave me anything, but he taught me everything. And he really showed me through action and through the way of thinking how I can have a better life. And I'm living what I consider a charmed life because of everything I learned from my father. And Gaia put everything in that book. I put all the valuable lessons that anybody could pick it up, whether you knew Bob Proctor or not. You could pick the book up, you could read it, you'll get a great story. And then after the story, there's going to be some consider points on, thoughts towards the story you just read, and how can you apply it in your life right now to alter your life to be just a little bit better. And that's really why I wrote it. I just thought this would be a great way to carry on my father's memory, for sure, but to really give an inside look of who Bob Proctor was, not just as a speaker, but as a father and as a friend, which most people never got to see.
Let me ask you to pick out one or two of those lessons and kind of expound upon them if you can.
Well, gosh, I mean, there's so many. Certainly one of them was that MMFI, that make me feel important, the impression of increase. That's a powerful lesson. We shouldn't fluff that off. Probably one of the biggest ones, and the one that's driven me so much through my life, is really about living in the present moment, and being the best version of ourselves in the present moment. Dad always had a great phrase. He said, you can't change the time you got out of bed this morning. And I really liked it when he said that. He says, what's happened in the past has happened in the past. And good or bad, it's happened. We can't change it. We can forgive it. We can forget it. We can do our best to let it go. But he says, you cannot change what's happened. All you can do is live in the present moment, here and now. And if we engage in the present moment and quit looking to our past or looking into the future, we're going to live a better life, because we're here in the present moment. We'll do more. We won't let nonsense rattle in our head and worry and anxiety. That will leave you if you live in the present moment. It's the quickest way to get rid of anxiety, is to be in the present moment. And, he was always big on goals. You need to have a goal that would inspire you. He said, so many people have a goal just to get a car or do something that you can figure out how to do it. If I did this and did that, and I went out and did this, I'd be able to achieve that, maybe next month or within the next year.
Right. Like we know the steps already.
Exactly. And he said, if you know the steps, there's no true inspiration in that. He said, inspiration comes from having a goal that excites you and that you have no idea how you're going to achieve it. But my God, it excites you. And he says, that is the kind of goal you want to have. And this was a big lesson that I learned from him. He says, if you have a goal like that, you will step out and do things that you would never normally do. And that's where growth happens. And that's a powerful thing.
Can you share maybe some goals you had that fit that bill?
Well, I mean, I can share recently, one of the big ones is the house I'm living in right now. My wife and I live in a beautiful custom built house. We're right on Puget Sound. We just love just watching the wildlife swim by. This house was no small deal. It cost us a lot of money to build, and we didn't want a mortgage to do it. We basically had to tear down the house that was here and rebuild a completely new home. And I didn't know, Guy, I didn't have a clue how we were going to do it. We didn't have the money in the bank to do it. Certainly we had some of it, but we had nowhere near all of it. But it excited us. We really, really wanted it. And we did what Dad did. He said, if you want something in your house, if you want the quality of this, whatever piece of a room or furniture or built in or whatever, do it. Don't worry about the cost. He says, if you just keep working and doing whatever it is that inspires you, you'll get it, you'll achieve it. And when we set that goal, it was a big goal. And I didn't know how we were going to do it, but we're now living in the house and we are loving this house. And what it did for me was it caused me to step out and do things, like I said, that I would never have normally done. I worked different deals on joint ventures. I did all kinds of things that would bring in extra income. Dad was always big on multiple sources of income. And I'm sure there's folks that you have here listening that are maybe working in a job and their income is limited. So they're thinking, well, that's great for you, Brian, but what about me? Well, what about you is you need to start to think about, okay, what else can I do to earn extra income? And it doesn't have to be another full-time job. The internet today has opened us up to so many things. You just need to find something else that you can do that you're passionate about, because you'll never do it long-term if you're not passionate about it, but something that you can do to start to build an extra income, a side income. And if you love it, it might not be a large income in the beginning, but boy, in a year, 2 years from now, it could be. And, we just need to step out and do things that we wouldn't normally do. That was the big thing with Dad. He said, if we can live day by day like most people do, but there's no inspiration in that. If we can do the extra, what drives us, what makes us really excited, the growth that happens in that will change not only our life, but it changes everybody's life around you. I look at my father. He started in the personal development field in the 1960s and 1970s when, personal development was not very popular in those days.
Right.
So it was a struggle for him. But he kept at it. He had persistence. He knew what he was teaching could change people's lives. And when he passed away, I will never forget that we did a live stream memorial, and we had hundreds of thousands of people online. And the comments that were coming in were they just touched my heart in such a way, because he touched lives all around the world.
Yeah, I remember when I first encountered him online, he was talking about his own story, and when that person gave him the book Think and Grow Rich, and he started reading that. And can you talk a little bit about how things shifted for him, how he got into this field?
Sure. Well, that book, Think and Grow Rich, for my father, I'll share something with you about that. So when he received that book, that was the year I was born. So that's when everything changed for him. At that point in time, he was in Toronto. He was working in the fire department. He was a fireman. And he received that book. He was earning $4,000 a year. And you'll hear this on the internet if you search out Bob Proctor. He owed probably $6,000. Didn't know how he was going to get out of the hole. But he got that book and he started reading it and studying it. And he got excited. And he started setting big goals. And he stepped out and he started a side business. And before long, he was earning more money in a side business than he was as a fireman. And, I think the year after he received the book, he earned $175,000. It's a lot of money in 1961, 1962, and because he applied the principles of that book. Well, here's the cool thing with Dad. From that moment on, he had a passion to teach others what happened to him and why it happened to him. And that's really where it all started. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was in Toronto, and I was doing an interview with somebody over in Copenhagen. And I was staying at my father's house, he and Linda, his wife. And I said to Linda, Linda, can I get Dad's book, the Think and Grow Rich book? And she said, sure. And she went and got it and brought it down to me. And when I held it, Guy, it was like, I could feel him,
Mm.
I mean, Dad passed away about a year and a half ago, and it's been tough without him. And that book was such a part of him. Well, here's the interesting thing. That book was held together with a big, thick rubber band. It was the original book he was given in 61. He never wanted a new one. He never wanted, people wanted to get it rebound for him. He wouldn't let them touch it. When I took the rubber band off and opened the book up, it literally, the pages were falling out. It was that well studied. And, Dad he studied until like literally the day before he died. I mean, he always said, I've never got it all. He was never big enough to think, I know it all. He studied every single day. And because he studied every day, he was able to change not only his life, but his entire family's life.
What do you, we're getting ready to close out here, but what do you say to the people listening who are like, this is great, I can't do this. This, this is, I could never do.
Well, you know what, Guy, here's the great thing. When I was working with my father, we had all kinds of programs that were very, pretty expensive programs. Here's my challenge to anybody listening to this. Go out and get the book. My Father Knew the Secret. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to brianproctor.com and you can order a copy. It is, right now, I think Amazon has it discounted. I think it's like $17 on Amazon right now. So it's a very inexpensive investment in yourself. I challenge you just to start to read the book. Whether you knew Bob Proctor or not, you're going to get some lessons in there that will show you what to do and why you should do it. And for those that think, well, there's no way I can change anything at this point in life. Well, I just challenge you to try it out. Just read the book. I've laid it out in such a way that it's simple, it's easy to understand, and it's easy to apply. I think that's the importance. Dad was always big on, don't complicate things. Make it really easy that anybody can apply. And for such an inexpensive thing, I believe that, and I say this confidently because this book isn't about me. This book is about my father, whether you knew Bob Proctor or not. He was a master at living a better life. And the lessons, the secrets, everything I share in there are everything that he taught his own son. So you're getting the goods. And so I'm pretty proud of it. And I really do believe that anybody starts to read this, you'll see how to alter your life. You'll see how to live a better life.
Awesome. Once again, My Father Knew the Secret. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the podcast here, Books, Read, Thrive. Brian, you're so inspiring. It's crazy. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
If you go to brianproctor.com, there's a contact us there. I will get the message. I'll see it.
Okay. I will have that linked up as well. Thank you so much for your patience and your grace. I really appreciate it.
Oh, listen, Guy, it's great speaking to you. I've really enjoyed this. You have just a wonderful presence about you. So this was an enjoyable interview.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.